Good morning, 5th grade. Today we're going to continue reading in our novel, The Birch Bark House. Before we get started, you have a quick write. It says, describe a time when you lost something or someone you loved. How did you grieve? Our question for today, press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready for the focus question. Our focus question for today is, what are the physical and emotional aspects of sickness? We're going to be analyzing how characters respond to the challenges that are brought on by the smallpox epidemic. Our vocabulary words are grief, and that is deep sorrow caused by someone's death. This little boy is grieving. The next word is reverently. That means with deep and solemn respect. These soldiers are reverently folding the flag at a ceremony. They're doing it with respect. And then lastly, we have stakes, and that's a sum of money or something of value gambled on the outcome of a risky game or venture. So the stakes, that's what you gamble. If you say, I bet you $10 it won't rain today, the stakes are the $10. All right, turn in your book to page 147. We're in the middle of chapter 10, and we left off where Omachius goes into the cabin, and all of her family, except for her and Nokomis, are sick. And she's decided that she's going to take care of them and risk getting the illness. We're at the air in the cabin, and we're using our CSPS strategy. The air in the cabin was thick with the stink of disease, but the hearth was warm. Nokomis had the sick ones arranged in their bedding, blankets pulled neatly up to their chins, mats clean on the floor all around the fire. Although Nokomis sat next to Mama in a stupor of exhaustion and did not at first speak to Omachius, she nodded encouragingly at Angeline, who slept easily now, her fever broken, her hands limp on the blanket. Omachius crouched beside her. That's when she saw that the beautiful face of her sister was covered with ugly sores and vivid lumps. And her mouth, when she opened it to breathe, showed that her gums bled painfully and stained her teeth red. Her hair was caught in a thick mat, but she was alive. Her breath moved steadily in and out. Mama slept, also covered with sores, unconscious, and still in the depth of her danger. Pinch kept tossing off his covers or dragging at Mama's. With the weary, loving, unthinking movement that showed she had done this thousands of times before, Nokomis replaced the blankets, held a tin cup of water to Pinch's lips, trickled a little water between Mama's lips, then Angeline's. Day-Day slumped over by the fire. She did not disturb except to lower him to the earth. Motioning to Omachius, she indicated Niwu, who was trembling now, his tiny arms and legs moving jerkily at the heat, as the heat in his body increased and increased, until he had not the strength to even cry. Keep him, said Nokomis tenderly, giving Niwu to Omachius, seating them by the fire. She placed her dry, old, cool hand on the back of Omachius's head. Just keep holding him, she said. And so Omachius did. She held Niwu through the night, dozing with him, waking when he thrashed, cleaning him, bathing with cool water his forehead and his tiny, straining, bony chest. We'll stop right there because we have information about the character and the setting. In box 1A, you would write, Nokomis tells Omachius to keep holding baby Niwu. Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready for the quote. You can write down this quote on page 148. Keep holding him, said Nokomis tenderly, giving Niwu to Omachius, seating them by the fire. She placed her dry, old, cool hand on the back of Omachius's head. Just keep holding him, she said again. Press pause to write down the quote and play when you're ready for the setting. We found the setting on the bottom of page 147. In box 2A, you would write, Omachius walked into the cabin where her sick family was. Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready for the quote. And for the quote, you would write down this quote on page 147. The air in the cabin was thick with the stink of disease, but the hearth was warm. Press pause to write down and play when you're ready to keep reading. We're at the top of page 149. She clenched his hands and his beautiful feet. She held him when he melted into a troubled sleep. When his breath rasped, when his cough deepened, when he cried and cried until his voice was gone, she held him when he grew still and quiet, too quiet, when his fever came back. One day passed, another blurred, and still she held her little brother, held him close in her arms. She held him as he looked mysteriously into her face, his eyes huge. She held him when he spat up blood, when he whimpered for Andeg, who sat high up in the roof beams, head underneath his wing. She held him through another night, held him when his chest went drum tight and when he struggled for breath, held him when he drew that breath deep from the heart. She held him when he died. She held him close. She didn't know exactly when his life went, except that Andeg croaked 3 times, longingly, as though for his playmate. Then Omachius knew that something had changed. Her little brother's body no longer warmed her with its heat. They were the same temperature, and then he was colder. Still, she did not let go. Nokomis had to take him from her arms, and when she did, Omachius fell down on the blanket, arms still held in the cradle shape of her brother, and knew nothing all that day. We'll stop right there because we have information about the problem. In box 3A, we would write, Niwu died, and Omachius is worried about how he will get to the spirit world. Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready to keep reading. Go ahead and turn the page. It was night when she woke. Opening her eyes, she knew at once what had happened, and the bleak knowledge made her shut her eyes again. Maybe, almost, she wished that she were sick too, that she could join him, for Nokomis had said that the Ojibwa must walk a path that leads out to this life to the next. And since Niwu couldn't walk very well yet, who would carry him when he got tired, when he fell? Who would make sure he was fed in the other world? Who would make him toy man dolls to dance? Who would care for him when he was lost? The answer, once she had risen, once she had began working with Nokomis to care for her family, was a sad answer. Old Tallow brought the news later that day. She set 4 snare rabbits down near the door and waited to speak. Tin Snow is gone, she said. On the road to the next world, surely she and Niwu would meet, thought Omachius, tears blinding her as she tipped water into her father's lips. Surely Tin Snow would take hold of Niwu's hand, swing him up in her arms, carry him along past the rough spots and danger, to the place where they would be safe. Old Tallow took the horn spoon from Omachius and ordered her to lie down to sleep. She made Nokomis lie down as well in the corner with her grandchild. You 2 rest now. Go on, and I'll take the stick to you. Her voice was fierce, rasping, angry, and strong. Nokomis obeyed her, sank into the skins, slept before her head touched the back of her blanket. Omachius was glad to do the same. All right, we'll stop right there. We have the solution to the first problem. In box 4A, you would write, Tin Snow also died, and Omachius believes that she will carry Niwu to the spirit world. Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready to keep going. Okay, so Old Tallow comes in and she makes everyone, she makes Omachius and Nokomis go to sleep. She cleans everything and she takes care of the family. Bottom of page 151. Otallow's work helped them, but the next day she left once more to hunt. Nokomis weakened, though she wasn't ill. Omachius alone was left to tend to the sick ones. She had to keep the fire going, haul the water, cover them, bathe them down, comfort them when they were restless. She hardly slept an hour at a time. First one needed her, then the other, then a third, the first again. There was no stopping. Their cries were pitiful. Okay, so Omachius, she keeps taking care of them. Go to the bottom of page 152. One night, Omachius woke to see Day trying to rise to his feet. In the dim light of the low fire, she saw him throw off his blanket. He tried to stagger outside. She knew that was certain death. Many died of this sickness when they became so fevered that they lost their minds, threw off their blankets, and walked outside to freeze. "Please, Day," she said, to draw him back. He sank onto all fours, but kept crawling determined toward the door, groaning hair wild. His eyes did not know her, and his face was frightful. He clawed at the door, fell to his knees, got up on his knees. This time he was so determined that Omachius knew there was no way she could save him from going outside. He was too strong for her, even in his sickness. Stop right there because we have information for the second problem. In box 3B you would write, Omachius had to take care of her family by herself. Day tried to escape into the cold because he was so sick. Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready to keep reading. We're on page 153. "Gawain, Anjita," she said, "I'm sorry." Raising a block of wood high, she brought it down on his head with all her strength. He crumpled to the ground. Omachius sobbed as she dragged his blankets to him and covered him. He was too heavy to drag near the fire. For a long time she kneeled next to him, praying for him to live. She loved him, her Day. What would they do without him? Back on her own blankets, she immediately sank into a fierce oblivion. When she woke, it was morning. Instantly she remembered the night before. Was her father dead? Had her blow killed him? Fear gripped her as she crept to his side, put her hand on his lips. His breath came evenly. He seemed a little better, even than the day before. As the morning went on, he sipped broth for the first time, opened his eyes. "My little frog," he smiled, closing his eyes again, this time to sleep comfortably. "You could bring down a bear with the strength in your club." His fever was broken at last. Omachius's constant attention brought the little family through the first part of the illness's danger. One by one they improved, all because of her careful nursing. We'll stop right there because we have information about the solution. In box 4B you would write, Omachius hit Day over the head with a club to keep him from going outside. And the next morning his fever was gone. Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready for the paragraph. It says, what challenge does Omachius face? What does her response reveal about her as a person? And so you could choose problem 1 or problem 2 to think about the challenge that she faces and how she responds. Make sure you include a character trait in your conclusion.